Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, drowning inside. What time do you call this, Maggie? I know, I'm sorry. The traffic. Don't give me that. You're never late. I had things to do. Things? Like what? Jimmy, don't start. What's with the sunglasses? They're just sunglasses. Take them off. Jimmy, please, take them. Office of Fine. What the hell happened? It's nothing. Damn it. Who gave you the shiner? Jimmy, leave it alone. Was it Neil? Numbered Terry then. Jimmy? It was, wasn't it? Fine? Yes, it was Terry. That son of a... Why? Jenkins. Keep your voice down. You don't know about my problems, sir. We don't want to hear about your private life, Jenkins. I didn't come here to fight, Jimmy. Then why did you come? Because we need to talk. Talk about what? United States. Us? There is no us while I'm stuck in here. You're wrong. There's still an us. Doesn't feel like it. You've been different lately. How would you even know that? I see it. The way you look at me, or don't. The way you talk, or don't. I'm tired, Jimmy. I bet you are, love. It's not easy by myself, but you manage. Barely. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Keep what up? This life. Alone. You're not alone. That's what it feels like. You've got the kids. They're not you. Then wait for me. Wait. Jimmy, you 4 more years. So? You knew that when I got sentenced. I didn't know it would feel like this. Feel like what? Like I'm drowning inside. You're stronger than this, Maggie. Maybe I'm not. Don't say that. It's the truth. You're just having a bad day. It's not just a day, it's every day. You want me to feel sorry for you? Jimmy, don't make this worse. I'm not the one making it worse. Why did Terry hit you? He thought I was cheating on you. Cheating? With Neil? That's what he said. Are you kidding me? I didn't do anything, Jimmy. And Terry thought it was okay to hit you over a rumor? It's not just that. Then what is it? I don't know. Maybe he thinks I owe him. Owe him? For what? For keeping an eye out for me and the kids. That's rich, coming from that piece of... Jenkins, I'm warning you. Stay out of this, sir. I see your sort every day, Jenkins, and hear how doing time affects families. You don't know nothing about me and my brood, boss. Yes, but I know how kids drift with absent fathers. When I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. Touch a nerve, did I, Jenkins? Jimmy, stop. He's not wrong. What? Bernie's angry. Linda's angry. They're lost, Jimmy. It's not like I abandoned them. Maybe not, but you're the one who took the fall. I didn't want you and the kids dragged into it. I can't do this on my own anymore. Maggie, don't. Don't what? Tell you the truth? Neil and Terry were supposed to have my back. Instead, they're wrecking my family. You wrecked it, Jimmy, when you got caught. Again. You think I wanted that post office job to go sideways? It didn't just go sideways, it exploded. I was the one who got burned, Maggie, and the rest of us didn't. I did it for you. You always say that. I mean it. And what about Linda? What about her? She's in trouble at school, Jimmy. Trouble? She got caught smoking. Not Linda? Yes, Jimmy. Linda. At least it wasn't weed. What makes you think that? God damn it. Why didn't you tell me? And say what? That I can't handle my own daughter? Maybe I could have talked to her and told her. From inside? How do you reckon that'd work out? Linda listens to me. She misses you, Jimmy. I miss her too. She's angry. At me. At the world. Linda feels abandoned. But I haven't forgotten about her. She doesn't see it that way. What am I supposed to do, Maggie? Maybe you should have thought about that before taking on another job. I didn't plan for things to go wrong, but they always do. This was supposed to be my last job. That's what you said last time. I mean it this time. Linda doesn't believe in you anymore. Don't say that. It's true. She was a daddy's girl, and now she's street smart, and now she's fallen in with a bad crowd. I hate missing her grow up. Then why do you keep ending up in here? I don't know. Yes, you do. It's the life, Maggie. Then change it. You know it's not easy. It's easier than losing your family. You make it sound so simple, Maggie. I'm serious, Jimmy. It's your choice. You're giving up on us? I'll survive. Without me, without Neil, without Terry, without all of this. Give me a chance. I'll fix it. I don't think you can. I can. I will. Jimmy. Maggie, I swear to you, I'll get out and I'll make it right. How? I'll get out of the life. For you. For Linda. I've heard it all before. This time I mean it. You better, Jimmy. Maggie, there's something else, isn't there? What do you mean? The bruise, the sunglasses? You've been crying. There's more. It's Bernie. Bernie's tough. He'll be fine. He wasn't fine last night when he crashed his motorbike. What happened? He's in the West Middlesex. Why didn't you tell me sooner? You've enough to worry about. But he's my son, Maggie. Your son? He barely talks about you. What do you mean, he? You two never got along. That's not true. It is, Jimmy. He's angry, just like Linda. Is he going to be all right? The doctors think so. What happened? He saw the bruise. He got angry. Went out on his bike to blow off steam and lost control. Because of Terry? Because of everything, Jimmy. Maggie, Don't. Just stop. I'll make it right. You keep saying that. I mean it. Then prove it. Time's up, people. Let's be having you. Maggie, please, don't give up on us. You know I can't promise that. You can't leave me now. Goodbye, Jimmy. I'll change. We'll see. I won't be home for Christmas. Life can be messy, complicated, difficult. Sometimes you can just lose yourself in all of it, and in the process, you can lose sight of the things that actually matter. And then one day a storm comes out of the clear blue sky, and you get blown overboard by the tempest, and all is lost in the blink of an eye. This is what happened to me. I just got caught up in all of the things that don't really matter. Money, career status, an address in the right part of town and elite private schools for the kids, and new luxury import autos, and Swiss-made wristwatches with tasteful but recognizable brand logos. Material things. Then came a day when I realized how unimportant it all was, but it was too late. Still, at first I tried to keep up the pretense of normality in the face of immeasurable loss. I had already bought the 12-foot Douglas fir Christmas tree and put up the holiday decorations all around the house. Family was flying in from 3 different states to visit for the holiday. I had arranged car service from the airport for everyone, a catered gourmet dinner for Christmas Eve, nice gifts for all, and I even took the time to memorize a heartwarming toast to the whole family before we sat down to eat. In the end, I had to just junk this because of the references to my wife and children. More than that, really. It just didn't work at all anymore. What was I supposed to do? I felt some strange obligation to appear unfazed, composed, in control of my emotions and my world. I don't know. That has always been my way, or at least the image I have always wanted to project. It's hard to say how much of it was ever truly real, and how much I just manufactured, for whatever reason. And it doesn't matter any longer anyway. It all happened on the evening of December 23rd, and everyone was flying in the next day. I was just numb afterwards, and didn't have the time or motivation for all the phone calls before those flights took off in the morning, so I was left with no choice but to inform everyone of what happened when they arrived at our house that day. My house. Once they were all there, and I had dodged the uncomfortable questions for as long as I possibly could, I gave a very different and mostly improvised speech from the one I had originally planned. Somehow, I made it to the end with dry eyes, though no one else did. I cried enough the previous night at the hospital. I wasn't sad anymore. I was just angry now. Well, folks, it seems that everyone has had a chance to grab a beverage, and although we are not fully gathered together as a family right now, I would like to proceed with some very unfortunate news that I have to share at this time. Not exactly a toast. Nothing like a toast, actually. The opposite of a toast. Just some words I have to say. I took a deep breath and a long, slow sip of my Macallan Scotch. I felt all the eyes on me, and I thought about what I should say, what I could say. I hadn't planned this out. I tried. I just couldn't. I want to thank you all for coming this far to spend the Christmas holiday with us, but I am afraid that us is just me now. Yesterday evening, around 6:30 p.m., Melanie and the kids were driving home from the mall down the road when they were T-boned at the intersection of Torrance and Sepulveda by a 25-year-old off-duty sheriff's deputy named Kyle Langtree, who ran a red light. All 3 of them were killed, but the sheriff's deputy, driving a large SUV, only sustained a concussion and some minor injuries. He is still in St. Mary's right now, but expected to be released within a day or 2. I paused and drained off the rest of my scotch. Everyone stared at me, their faces fixed in various expressions of shock and horror and disbelief, the tears already starting to fall. Hands were raised to cover mouths. I took another deep breath and continued, not even knowing what to say next, only knowing that I had to say something. I kind of muttered the next part down towards my shoes. The local news channels are all reporting that this sheriff's deputy had just left a holiday party at a bar down the street, and the LAPD officer who was first on the scene breathalyzed this guy, and he apparently blew a 1.8 BAC, more than twice the legal level for DUI. When the LAPD cop radioed this in, he was advised that this sheriff's deputy was the younger brother of both the local DA and the U.S. congressman representing this district. This was picked up over the police scanners used by several local news outlets. Instead of being taken to jail, he was taken to St. Mary's, like I said. Apparently, he also had 2 prior DUIs that were both dismissed for no apparent reason. You can read about it all here in today's paper if you want. Front page. I dropped a copy of the local newspaper on the table. I paused again. I didn't know what else to say. My older brother Jamie came up and gave me a powerful hug and whispered some kind words in my ear and cried some tears onto my neck and collar. My Aunt Jane approached me, but then stopped, not knowing what to do. I didn't blame her. I didn't either, but I did my best. You are all my dearest friends and family, and I thank you all so much for coming to be here. I am just so sorry that it has come under these terrible circumstances. I set my empty glass on a coaster on the table. Somehow it was still important for me to appear unrattled, composed. The coaster was somehow still important. We all have to do what we all have to do for the love of our family, and you have all shown and proven that by being here right now. I love you all dearly, and I'm so sorry to have to share this terrible news with you at this time. I pretended to get choked up. Then I lowered my head and excused myself and went to my bedroom to get what I needed as my family broke out in open gasps and cries and barely restrained sobs and sorrows in the living room. I quietly slipped out the side door and drove my Mercedes AMG GT to St. Mary's Hospital. I parked it in a handicapped spot when I got there. I wouldn't be needing it any longer. I decided to leave it to my nephew Nicholas once I had a chance to meet with my lawyer. He was a good kid who just graduated from Penn State, and I knew he loved that car. He deserved it. I decided to set him up with some cash too, just to help him get started. You never know what life has in store for you. I certainly didn't, and that's how I ended up here, sitting in this small cell in the LA County Jail, spending Christmas Day all by myself, eating a bologna sandwich for dinner, or trying to anyway. I don't have much appetite. This is the first time in my entire life that I have spent Christmas alone. I will be on suicide watch for the next 48 hours, and after that, the wheels and gears of the legal system will make their slow and inevitable turns, and I will end up in Pelican Bay or San Quentin or someplace like that for the rest of my life. Murder 1, assault with a deadly weapon, menacing, illegal parking in a designated handicap space. Haha. They have me. They have me dead to rights. They have me on video for all of it. I don't care. It was unfortunate that I had to put down that security guard who tried to stop me from reaching Deputy Langtry's hospital room, though. I shot low, in the center of his thigh. Hopefully he will be okay. Hopefully I missed the femoral artery. I tried my best, but it all happened pretty fast and I'm no marksman. It could have been worse, I guess. At least he was already in a level 1 trauma unit. Young guy. I feel bad about that part. They won't tell me anything about how he's doing, or if he has a wife and kids or anything like that. I hope he's okay. I will leave some money for him too once I meet with my lawyer and update my last will and testament, for whatever that might be worth. I don't know what else I can do. I just feel really bad about it. I never wanted to hurt anyone else. Anyway, they can't keep me on suicide watch forever. And like I said, we all have to do what we all have to do for the love of our family. I did what I had to do for the love of my family. I have no regrets. Anyone want the rest of this bologna sandwich? I'm not hungry. Merry Christmas. I think this one will probably be my last, but I hope you enjoy many more, engulfed in the warmth and love of all your family and friends. I just need to find a rope, cuts like a knife. I look at the sign over the door. Beauville Historical Society, my new home. I am now an artifact, a historical thing. How have I gotten to be this old, this obsolete? Does anyone even use grinding wheels anymore to sharpen things? It has been a long time since I have felt anyone's hands on me, Prior to coming here, I had been sitting in a dusty old barn for years, unused, unloved. That is, until someone decided to move me. A tattooed young man wearing an earring, a stranger to me, threw me in the back of his pickup and brought me here, dropping me off unceremoniously at the front door. He then sped away as if he were relieved to be rid of me. I have to say that hurt my feelings. He slammed me down and didn't even say goodbye before speeding away in his monster truck with the jacked up wheels and loud muffler. I try to look on the bright side. No use crying. Tears might make my metal frame and seat rust, although my heavy stone will be no worse for the wear. Chin up, I tell myself. At least now that I'm here, occupying a place of honor by the front door, perhaps I will be looked at and admired, if not used. I look around and spot other artifacts nearby, my peers. The first thing I notice is a horse plow, the kind that has a platform, really just a metal square, for its driver to stand upon while he steers the horses. I remember, back in the day, when my master had one just like it, pulled by giant, strong horses, a breed called Percherons. I remember it was a long, slow process. The horses were very strong, but sometimes hard to control. Nevertheless, the plow did a remarkable job, plowing deep, even furrows in the rocky soil. Next to the plow, there is an ancient piano with scrolled curlicues and whorls carved into its polished mahogany woodwork. There is no rhyme or reason to this crazy museum. Outdoor farm equipment is jumbled together with indoor furniture and other sundry items. The piano's deep, dark, polished wood is still in good shape, but the ivory has worn off its keys, making the keyboard look like a person with blackened or missing teeth. I suspect the piano needs tuning. I wonder if it even can be played. It looks like the kind of piano that has been sitting for years in someone's dark basement, with mice possibly making a nest inside. Alongside the piano, I spot a spinning wheel with a foot pedal, an ancient freestanding gas oven and stove with spindly legs, a roll-top desk along with an inkwell and feathered pen missing some of its quills, and other ancient worn items too numerous to mention. Like the spinning wheel, I also have a wheel, a circular, thick, heavy stone. The wheel is activated by a foot pedal, which causes it to spin and sharpen things into a fine point. The person doing the sharpening has to bend down and press the object firmly into my wheel for an extended period of time. It's a little bit like riding a bizarre bicycle. The ride is sometimes long and arduous. The user has to be patient, giving rise to the old saying of keeping one's nose to the grindstone to achieve good results. Back in the day, I was used to sharpen knives, axes, saws, really all kinds of things. It has been a very long time, however, since anyone has used me to sharpen anything. I honestly can't remember the last time I felt cold metal of any kind pressing into my hard stone. I am now over 100 years old, but am still in great shape, if I do say so myself. Still firm, solid. I can still sharpen with the best of them. I stand ready and willing to sharpen whatever comes my way, although I should have learned my lesson based on my past mistakes. I wonder idly if anyone cares about my abilities. What will they write on my informational placard? Will anyone even read it? Every object in the museum has a brief description displayed. I imagine the curator of the museum probably will stick to brief facts. How old I am, who owned me, what kinds of things I sharpened long ago. I think my viewers deserve a more exciting story, however. They deserve to know the truth. I should really write that story myself. Maybe I'm a tad conceited, but I would like everyone to sit up and take notice of what I can do. The results that can be achieved with a sharp tool or weapon. The results you see are really quite astounding and deadly. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, I sharpened something to a very fine, edgy point. That point was used for something dangerous. Although I am proud of my abilities, I must confess that I feel somewhat guilty about the whole thing. I guess you could say I was an accessory to a crime. My master, we called him Big John due to his immense size, came to me one day for service. He bent over me for hours, keeping his nose to the proverbial and actual grindstone, sharpening his favorite knife into a razor-fine point. The knife had a long, hooked blade. He kept it in a black leather sheath in the pocket of his overalls. It didn't look like the kind of knife a farmer should carry. It wasn't a knife for whittling, or cutting branches or barbed wire, or even gutting the catfish that swam in our creek. No, that knife was a weapon he kept in his pocket just in case. Big John was a hothead, you see, the type of man who always believed in carrying a weapon, convinced that he might one day need it. He was also on the prowl, not for a perceived enemy, but for a wife. He was convinced that the farm needed a woman's touch, convinced he needed to sire some children to carry on his bloodline. He was somewhat of an old-fashioned man, wanting an adoring little woman and a whole passel of children surrounding him, working alongside him on his beloved farm. To achieve his goal, after a long, hard week farming, one Friday night, he took himself off to town, spiffed up in his best overalls. The knife occupied its usual sheath in his pocket. Big John had his eyes on a young barmaid named Sarah. Sarah was the daughter of the tavern's owner. She was a buxom blonde, cheerful and friendly, serving her customers with alacrity and a bright smile. She seemed to be a hard worker, keeping up with the demands of a rowdy, thirsty crowd effortlessly. Clad in a low-cut, frilled blouse and a flouncy skirt, she immediately caught Big John's attention. Being a practical man and a farmer, he noted with approval her broad, childbearing hips, swishing along as she carried a wooden tray filled with heavy steins of beer. Usually she could deflect the wandering hands of intoxicated, grabby men who got overly friendly when she served them their beer and whiskey. One man, in particular, an uptight, prissy banker with a gray comb-over on his bald head, would not take no for an answer. Forgoing her usual politeness, she slammed down his beer and turned hurriedly to leave, knowing that he would undoubtedly try to detain her. Sure enough, the man's whiskey breath was hot in her face, and he grabbed her around the waist. "Stop, sir. I need to get going." She forced a smile to dull her sharp words. "What's your hurry, darling?" he slurred, grasping her tighter. She once again tried pulling away, to no avail. For a man who sat behind a desk all day, his grip was surprisingly firm. Big John, who was sitting one table over, felt fury rising in his chest. He stumbled to his feet and quickly stomped over. "I believe the lady told you to remove your hands, sir." He choked out the last word. In his opinion, the man did not deserve to be treated like a gentleman. The good manners his mama had instilled in him prevailed, however, forcing him to be marginally polite. "What you gonna do about it, farm boy?" the man sneered. Sarah squirmed in the man's grasp, trying to pull herself free. Big John saw red. "Who you calling a boy?" "You, of course," the man said coolly. "I'm no boy." Big John spat. Suddenly, he pulled the knife out from its sheath in his pocket and brandished it menacingly at the banker. The man at last dropped his arms from around the barmaid's waist. "Whoa there, big fella. No need to get violent. Put that thing away." Big John continued to hold the knife. All at once, the banker's hand shot out like lightning, and he knocked the knife away from Big John. The knife clattered to the floor. The bar room was suddenly silent. its customers frozen in stupefied fascination at the scene rapidly unfolding in front of them. Both men bent at once to pick up the knife. Being smaller and more agile, the banker was the first to reach the weapon. He raised it in the air triumphantly, the knife's sharp metal gleaming in the candlelight, emitting an eerie glow. "Give me that back," Big John yelled. "Never!" screamed the banker. The two men were now struggling over the knife, Big John trying unsuccessfully to wrestle it away from the banker, who was surprisingly strong for a skinny, middle-aged desk jockey. In one last desperate attempt, the banker brought the knife down forcefully, stabbing it into Big John's thickly muscled chest. Big John made a horrible gurgling noise and fell heavily to the floor, the blood pooling around him. The metal part of the knife sank deeply into the big man's chest, only its black handle protruding. Yes, my friends, Big John died. I am sorry to say that my sharpening skills led to his demise. I never saw that coming. It still tears me up inside. When I first heard the news, I shed a few tears. Someone had to wipe me off with an old towel. They wondered if the barn roof was leaking at the time. Luckily, I didn't rust. Big John was a good man. May he rest in peace. He was only trying to protect his lady love. Maybe if the knife hadn't been so sharp, he might have lived. But no, he bled out. Like a stuck pig. His parents buried him at the base of the big hill, down by the creek, on the farm, resting on his beloved land, the land he had hoped one day to pass down to his children. Sarah, the barmaid, came to his funeral. The children they might have had together never came to be. The knife, I am sorry to say, was never recovered. I don't know whatever happened to it. I am sure its point is just as sharp to this very day. I still feel guilty about the whole thing. My own pain cuts like that knife. When I do something, I do it right. Big John was the same way. If only he hadn't kept his nose so long to my grindstone. It's possible he just might have lived obscure recollection. "Dad, where are the yams at?" Frankie yelled up the basement stairs. "Behind the peas, son," Dad yelled back. As Frankie walked to turn the light switch off, he looked over at his father's terrible masonry job that he did right after Frankie's 12th birthday. Until recently, the basement had always been a place Frankie's mother and father never allowed them in. The only things down there were various odds and ends. His father's tools and the freezer next to the pantry. Frankie flipped the switch, putting the basement back into darkness again. "Jenny, did Robert tell you what happened at school other day?" asked Frankie. "No, he never calls me anymore," said Jenny. As Mom was mashing the potatoes Dad had cleaned and prepped for her, Frankie handed Dad the yams he requested. "Well, I met Susie. She's in my biology class. She also wants to be an X-ray tech. She is so cool," said Frankie. "Oh, Frankie, another one? What happened to, what's her name?" asked Jenny. "Rebecca," Frankie said somberly. "Yay, what happened to her?" asked Jenny. "I have no idea. She just disappeared. Everything seemed to be going great. Then she just ghosted me," said Frankie. "She probably ran off with someone else. I never liked that girl," said Mom. "Frankie," yelled Robert from the living room. "Come here. I think this is the lion's year." "Okay, hang on," Frankie yelled back. "Better go and watch the game, son," Dad said. "Yay, okay," replied Frankie. It was Thanksgiving for the Goldsmiths, a real family affair. All the kids were out back with their father, Jenny's husband, playing in the snow. Mom was trying to finish the pies, and Jenny was doing the usual Wordle on her phone. Robert was in the living room watching the game. The usual Thanksgiving chaos. As Frankie went to sit with Robert, there was an abundance of chips, dips, and cakes on the coffee table. "They are killing the bears," said Robert happily. "What's the score?" asked Frankie. 38-10. It's going to be their year, I swear, said Robert. As Frankie kicked back, watching the game with his brother, the kids were on the back deck taking off their snow gear, and Robert started complaining. He was not a kid person. The three siblings were all completely different due to being adopted. However, they were still solid in their bonds with each other, and Robert always kept his opinions to himself. My name is Frankie Goldsmith. I am here on Thanksgiving telling a story so screwed up, it's hard to tell it without it sounding like a Criminal Minds episode. No, seriously. If I was outside my head, I wouldn't believe it myself. Let's get back to it. Frankie was in college chasing a degree as an X-ray technician. His sister Jenny was the oldest, being in her mid-30s with 3 children. Her husband, James, was a salesman with a local company. He was a good guy who went to work, came home, and enjoyed his simple and organic life. "Everyone to the table! It's time to eat!" yelled Dad. Everyone rushed to the table. Mom's cooking was impeccable. This was one of 3 major meals cooked at the Goldsmiths that was off-the-chain delicious. The other 2 are Easter and Christmas New Year's. All the food was great and unique to its holiday. As they gathered around and sat, Jenny's twins, Lenny and Lucy, started arguing. "I want to sit next to him," shouted Lucy. "No, I am," argued Lenny. "Stop it, you two." "Olivia, you sit next to Paw, James said to his oldest daughter. Lenny and Lucy seemed to argue about everything. We all settled into our seats and grabbed our neighbor's hand so Dad can say grace, which was one of our family traditions. As Dad began, that's when this story goes from 0 to 100 real quick. "Father, as we gather here today, we give thanks to you." Crack. Boom. The front door exploded open, and in rushed at least 30 police officers, fully armed and yelling for everyone to get on the ground. 2 of the officers grabbed the children and rushed them out the hole where our parents' front door used to be. Now, let's pause. You gotta be wondering, what in the hell is going on? Let's back it up just a little bit, like 6 months. We will get back to it, I promise. First, I gotta catch you up some so you understand what the hell is happening. Jenny showed up around 10:30 a.m. to talk to Mom about the new outfits she purchased for Olivia. I was at the table studying for an exam I had later that week. Jenny chatted to Mom about the clothes, then she started to explain that she saw a TikTok about a cold case that reminded her of a reoccurring dream she had. Mom's face went blank and she asked, "What did you do, Jenny?" "Nothing. What do you mean?" Jenny replied. The room lost all its happy energy as I picked up Mom's vibes. Oblivious, Jenny continued to talk about this TikTok and how she thought it was about her birth parents. "Mom, you said the orphanage told you that my parents were very young and just left me there?" Jenny asked. "Yes, dear. Now enough of this talk. I need to go to the grocery store." "You two lock up if you leave," Mom said. Something was definitely up to something. Mom appeared so rattled as she was fumbling about. She left in such a hurry she forgot to grab her phone. Jenny came over and sat at the table with me. "Frankie, I have to tell you something, but you can't tell Mom and Dad," Jenny said with a serious expression. I nodded and she asked, "Have you ever heard of 23andMe?" "No. What's that?" Frankie asked. "They use DNA to find out your ancestral family tree. I sent off my DNA and discovered that I am from Northern Africa," Jenny said. "Okay, why the sudden interest?" Frankie asked. "That is not important. What is important is that I found out who my birth parents were," Jenny said. "Were?" Frankie asked, puzzled. "Jenny, what is going on?" hang on. Jenny got up and walked over to the counter where Mom's phone was and picked it up. She tried to unsuccessfully unlock the phone twice. "What are you doing?" Frankie yelled. "That's Mom's phone." "You are acting crazy." "I got to know for sure, Frankie," Jenny said. Frankie paused a minute, sighed heavily and said, "Try our birth years." The phone unlocked and Jenny started to go through it, and it was all normal stuff. "It doesn't make sense," Jenny said quietly. "Will you tell me what is going on?" "What did you think was going to be on it?" Frankie asked. "Frankie, Mom and Dad kidnapped us," Jenny blurted out. "There is no orphanage. My name is not Jennifer Goldsmith, it's Ada Abimbola. My parents and I went missing 31 years ago." "What? This can't be true. Mom and Dad would not do this," Frankie yelled. "Frankie, I researched it. It's true. I talked to a detective, and we cannot tell them we know. We must act normally. The detective believes there are more children they kidnapped besides me, you and Robert. The police know and discovered who you are too," Jenny said. Frankie knew it was true. As hard as it was to believe, he could feel it. What now? This was all he could think. He walked over and sat on the couch, and Jenny came over and sat next to him, knowing exactly what he was feeling. Betrayal, hurt, and curiosity. Who were these people? "Frankie, we must work with the police. James knows all about it, but we cannot tell Robert," Jenny said seriously. "The police are watching Mom and Dad. They think they are holding another family now. Can you meet with Detective Hunt? He will explain everything to you." Jenny continued. "Okay, now that you are all caught up, what now? Should I leave it alone and just walk away? No, you say? All right, I will finish the story the best way I can, but it doesn't get better. If you're sure? Okay, let's get to it." Just as the two officers brought the children outside, Dad jumped up and ran towards a cabinet. Pop, pop. The police shot him just as he was reaching into the cabinet. Robert kept yelling, "Can someone please tell me what is going on?" I yelled over at him to just do as they say. Mom got onto the floor, and it was obvious by her face that she knew exactly what was going on. The gig was up. As I was lying on the floor, I looked over at Dad, and he was not moving, just bleeding out. I did not feel any remorse. The officers handcuffed Mother and led her out the door. They let the rest of us get up. Jenny, James, and I took Robert over to the couch and told him what was going on. He just sat staring blankly, not saying anything. Life seemed to come to a halt after that. Everything played out exactly like Detective Hunt said, except one detail. They never expected that one. Overlooked detail. The police took Dad, or Thomas Dunning's phone, and found evidence of everything. Information and photos of all the children they abducted, the ones they sold, the parents they killed. In the basement, they found the remains of over 40 bodies behind the block wall, as well as a torture chamber. They also discovered multiple storage units spread across 7 states. There was one thing that Detective Hunt could not figure out until this day, right now. As I tell this story, there is one more loose end. What changed 18 years ago? Why did they change their MO? Detective Hunt cross-referenced everything. Who was helping them abduct these children? That is when I figured it out. Well, it was something I just felt. Do you want to know? Okay, I'll tell you. It has been about 6 months since the takedown. This was the weirdest affair Colorado had ever seen. Jenny, Frankie, and Robert tried to move on. but it was almost impossible because their life was now on every news station. Frankie tried moving twice, with the same result. One day, Robert was visiting, and he and Frankie were talking when it happened. Something Robert said caught Frankie's attention, and he knew. The only way Robert could know that was if he was a part of it. Frankie bought a gun for protection, and he tried to act normally as he went for it. He slid the drawer open as Robert watched. Oh no, it was gone. Frankie looked up and Robert motioned him to sit down. The end? Or was this all an obscure recollection? R.I.P. Michael Brent Haddix. I want to dedicate this one to my brother. At 6:30 p.m. Saturday, my brother passed away. He had been battling liver failure for 2 years. Thanks everyone at Reedsy. You guys really are my friends and colleagues. I found writing and left alcoholism behind. This community has been my therapy to keep me away from this disease. I miss you already, Michael. A perfect Sunday evening, except for the screaming and blood. A few years ago, I crossed Fairmont Street to avoid the sun. Had I been a hardier soul and stayed on the east side of the street, I might not have met the woman of my dreams. But I did cross the street, and I met Vivian. In the fullness of time, we fell in love. We have been together 5 years, and each day seems better than the last. Even today seemed perfect, except for the screaming and the blood. You take the legs and I'll get the shoulders, Vivian said, as she reached down to grab the upper part of the bound and gagged man. I did as instructed, and we tossed the writhing body in the bed of the pickup truck. It wasn't easy because he was a fat son of a bitch. Jason Mobley, the man currently enjoying the view from the back of the truck, is as sorry a human being as we had ever come across. Without delving into the sordid details of his sins, suffice it to say that he has put more than one person in the ground and collected the insurance payout. Vivian's mom was one of the victims. I stopped the truck and slid out. Vivian and I took out the jack, a hammer, and a rope. Jason's eyes widened at the sight of the rope, and he wriggled in terror, thinking we were going to hang him. No, Jason. What we were going to do will be much worse. The first kiss did it for me. I had kissed plenty of women before, but none had the cool fire of Vivian's lips. A subtle, searching hunger, a slight moan, a soft sigh. I was lost in Vivian from that point on. Moving Jason was much easier now because we could roll him. He kicked at Vivian, but she punched him in the mouth and the kicking ceased. You had to admire a woman who could solve a problem with a punch. I set the loop of the rope under the truck and placed the jack inside the loop. Vivian loosened the nuts on the flat tire. Now I could jack up the truck. The flat tire was tossed into the back of the truck, and the spare tire was left leaning against the bare wheel. The scenario was ready. Okay, Deeds, let's get this overstuffed bastard under the wheel. That's me, Deeds, short for Dee Dee. A name made for trailer park trash like me. Let's take the rag out of his mouth. Maybe he has some final words before we do him in. I may have come from a home that had wheels, but common courtesy should be observed. Vivian grimaced at the suggestion, but complied. I'll kill you. I'll fucking kill both you whores. Let me go. Vivian kicked him in the ribs. Apparently, Jason Mobley never heard of making one's last words memorable. I squatted down beside Jason. You're gonna have an accident while changing a flat tire. The jack is gonna slip and you'll be pinned under the truck. The weight will crush you, but you won't die right away. Jason tried to wriggle away, so Vivian kicked him in the crotch. Another effective maneuver by the love of my life. It'll be slow and painful, Jason. I'm a nurse, so I know how these things go. Your chest will be crushed from the initial blow, and then from the pressure. You'll start spitting blood, but it won't do you any good because you'll drown in it. The blood, I mean. You gotta let me go. I have money. Lots of money. I'll give it all to you girls. We don't want your money, Vivian spat out. What do you want? I'll do anything. Vivian stared at Jason. I just want to see you suffer, then die. Like my mom. He started screaming as we pulled the rope taut. The screams could probably be heard a mile away in this still air, but no one was around to hear them. Vivian and I jerked the rope, and the jack slipped, crashing down on Jason. The screaming stopped, replaced by a grunt, and followed by the gurgle of blood in his throat. Well, he finally shut up, Vivian said. She chewed on a piece of beef jerky, but spat the juice out. I never understood that, but she sure looked cute while spitting. That's true love when you think these sorts of things. That's because he can't scream anymore. His lungs are full of blood, and he's choking to death. Slowly, I hope. Oh yeah, he's having a terrible time of it, I said, glancing at the man being crushed to death. He looked pitiful and small, despite his bulk. Say, do you remember when we first met? I turned to Vivian. She had just spat out a wad of beef jerky and put it in a bag. It wouldn't do to leave DNA evidence behind. Smart woman. Of course. You were just standing in the middle of the sidewalk staring at me. It was a little creepy, but also nice. Like someone found me attractive. Well, you were that, are that. Will always be that, I think. Vivian cuddled up next to me, and we watched Jason slowly slip away. It was terribly romantic, watching someone die while embracing your lover. The police department of Vanderpool, Texas doesn't exist, so the county sheriff and his lone deputy took charge. After an exhaustive investigation that lasted almost 10 minutes, they concluded Jason Mobley suffered a fatal accident. He was a dumb shit anyway, the sheriff said. If brains was leather, he wouldn't have enough to saddle a pissant. And with that trenchant observation, he and the rest of the world walked away from Jason Mobley. 2 nights later, we were in bed, tired and at peace after some serious canoodling. The scent of jasmine wafted in with the cool breeze, the curtains fluttering in the indecisive light of a waning crescent moon. People say that you don't feel better after avenging a death with a death. That's bullshit, Deeds. I feel great about it. Vivian lit a cigarette and passed it to me. I took a long drag and handed it back, letting my hand linger on hers. I don't know that I feel great about it, but I sure don't feel bad about it. I wonder if you feel different about me now. I turned to Vivian and stroked her cheek. Surprisingly, it had tears. Vivian wasn't one of those girls that cried much. The night had gone seriously quiet. Even the curtains stopped making any noise. It was as if they wanted to listen in. I think we should move in together. Vivian smiled and wiped away her tears before kissing me. Like the first kiss between us, it swallowed me whole without consuming me. If we do that, all the people around here will call us lesbians. Viv, we are. She thought about it for a moment before tamping out the cigarette. Okay, your trailer house or mine? You would think this was the end of the story, all wrapped up with a happy ending, right? My friends, this is just the beginning. Another perfect evening was slowly ambling its way towards us. Vivian, very fetching in her cutoffs and tank top, sat on a rock and chewed on beef jerky. I was a little jealous that she could look so good after 10 years of living together. I was never what you'd call pretty, and the years spent toiling as a nurse were taking a toll on me. Not to put too fine a point on it, I was looking a little like 10 miles of bad road. I was also feeling my age, which was uncomfortably close to 40. I thought of my future a lot these days. More specifically, I pondered my life as an old lady. Vivian would tell you that I do this too often, and perhaps she's right. Her sunny disposition gives me sunburn because it never lets up. The problem is that she's too pretty. I see others looking at her, and I know what those looks mean. A cold dread squeezes me. A terrible thought gets in my head and stays there. As sure as sugar is sweet, Vivian will leave me one day, which is why I have to kill her. That's what I tell myself anyway. It isn't easy corralling a rattlesnake. First, you have to find them. Then you have to coax them into a bag without getting bitten. Then you have to feed them and keep them hidden so your victim is caught unawares. I am going to considerable lengths to kill Vivian and make it look like an accident. I hope she appreciates it. Sunday afternoons are hot in August around here, but it starts to cool off around 7 o'clock. When the evening starts to make an appearance, the magic of the area gets serious. This particular Sunday evening was splendid. The wind whispered through the prairie grass and tickled the leaves of the gnarled oaks. Lizards skittered here and there, looking for food or shelter or, perhaps, just a few final rays of sunshine. I tossed my well-kept rattler in the bed of our pickup truck and induced Vivian to come out for a walk. We had our special place about 3 miles down the road. We would often drive there and spend hours walking over the hills and finding a good place to have a late picnic. The picnic usually ended up with us drinking too much cheap wine and getting naked. I hope we didn't traumatize the lizards. And now we come to it. The dastardly deed. Things didn't turn out as planned. I spied on you. Vivian's confession wounded me. How can a person reasonably expect to commit murder when the intended victim is better at it? She had me wrapped up in cellophane, Glad Wrap, BTW, before I knew what was happening. It was a little embarrassing to be put in such a position, but even worse was the betrayal. I should have known, though. She stopped kissing me like she used to kiss me. I never thought it would come to this, Viv. But you kept on getting prettier, and I just got older. Vivian took the bag with the snake from the back of the truck and laid it down by my feet. She knelt next to me and stroked my hair. I could see the tears streaming down her face, and her chest spasmed as she tried not to sob. I still love you, you idiot, but I can't let you kill me. I could argue the point, but I didn't. No use. She held the upper ground, and she had the snake. I eyed the bag distastefully. Vivian saw me and understood. Probably not a very pleasant way to go, but it's what you had planned for me. True enough, my journey in life is over. I know that because I know Vivian. She'll carry through with the deed, and I'll be just another rattlesnake victim in South Central Texas. The only consolation I have is that she's too smart to get caught. I deserve to die, but she doesn't. It'll probably hurt, Deeds. It has to be the ankle so it looks like an accident, and it'll take a while to stop your heart. I'm sorry, sweetie. It hurt like hell. This is my last bit of writing because my hands are starting to tremble. Like Jason Mobley, I don't have any high-minded final words. I just wish the bitch hadn't outfoxed me. Vivian's narrative. deeds forgave me for what I had to do. I know this because we kissed one last time, right before the snake bite. It was the same as the first time she kissed me. I can't describe things as well as her, but when she kisses me like she means it, the feeling of her love lingers long after the lips separate. I'm gonna miss her like hell, escaping neutrality. Good morning, Derek. Morning, Doc. How are you feeling today? Any more thoughts of harming? I had to interrupt her. Dr. Fuller was one of the better shrinks I'd had to deal with, but she was a real job's worth about following the script. It would be the same old introductory questions. She couldn't help but tick those boxes at the top of the day's crisp white form, still warm off the copier, but would be terrified of doing so unless I actually said the words. I struggled to find the patience to verbalize my repeated and identical statements. Ever noticed how stark our world has become? I asked out of the blue, cutting her off to her obvious annoyance. She sighed, then visibly gathered up a well-practiced decorum. What do you mean by that? She asked, abandoning the prescribed sheet for later and joining my real conversation. I was proud of her. I mean that when we were children, the world was full of color. I'd wait to cross the road and see cars of gold, green, red, and blue fly past. I'd look down the street, and every house would be trimmed with sage guttering, burgundy window frames, or dark blue front doors. My bedroom was even painted a musky orange and had deep brown carpets at one point. It really offset the crimson of my lava lamp and the teal of my inflatable couch. But today, what do you see when you look around? I still see some of those things, but you're right. Most things are far more tastefully done these days. Do you miss your childhood? Would colorful surroundings bring you more comfort as you had back then? Tasteful, classy, reserved, miserable, soul-destroying, I said, hammering my point home and ignoring her textbook questions. Dr. Fuller really needed to up her game, but what could I expect from someone so new to the field and so young? I bet you drive a white car, huh, Tasha? Doctor. Fuller, please, Derek. Yes, I do. Why is that relevant? Well, I know for a fact that they've made white the cheapest option. For any splash of color whatsoever, you have to pay a premium now. Is it any wonder that every modern car you see in the road is now white? I suppose not. Most, like me, cannot afford the extra expense. What are you getting at here, Derek? Only that the world was fading, having its color drawn out, far before I was ever denied the sight of it. I did not register her next question. Her side of the conversation always included a question. I was distracted by the spontaneous idea that Dr. Fuller would have an office somewhere, and that there was a chance it might not be quite as bland as her car. Its walls might be covered in bright book spines, all in clear view from the comfortable, deep maroon couches. A myriad of certifications in shining wooden frames would sit side by side with calming vistas, no doubt depicting an unnamed ocean of calming blue spotted with colorful sailboats. I imagined it as being quite pleasant. Perhaps she was right. A throwback to my early years, drenched in technicolor, might have offered me some contentment, useless to contemplate. I would never again see such a sight in this life. My imagined home for the dear doctor was a far cry from our current reality. Whitewashed concrete encased the bare room I was forced to meet her in daily. Gray, steel chairs and a matching table offered the only tint to the otherwise monochrome box. Tasha's wardrobe of endless white blouses and gray skirts might have been a choice, but I expected it was simply a subconscious effort to conform to the washed-out world that we both inhabited. "Did you hear what I said, Derek?" she asked, ducking her head to try and catch my vacant eyes. No, I answered honestly. Where were you? Credit. Where credit is due, the doc had some skills. Instead of accelerating with her own agenda, she was able to pull into my lane at a moment's notice. Time to knock her off the road. I was imagining where I would find you, outside of this place. Without these, I said, staring her directly in the eye and pulling sharply on the handcuffs that strapped my wrists to my chair. The loud and sudden clink of the metal chain startled her, and I watched as her pupils dilated in fear. It was the little pleasures. Telling the truth, but in a way that elicited the reaction I desired. It was all the entertainment I could find anymore. I thought she was done after that. Figured she would flee, never to return, to be replaced with yet another box-checking drone, fresh out of shrink school, wanting to prove they could handle the worst of the worst. Instead, she surprised me. You will never again be without those, Derek, nor will you ever see the outside world freely. My job here is only to determine which walls will hold you. Do you understand that? Tasha said, setting her jaw and returning my stare. Always another question with Doc Fuller. I understand completely. I am not a simpleton, I snapped. Her resilience annoyed me. I agree. It's quite the opposite, I think. You are clearly very intelligent, Derek. After these few sessions, I can see you are more than capable of self-reflection. So shall we stop wasting each other's time and get back on task? Pass your psych evaluation, and I'll put my recommendation in that you be transferred to Parkhurst and allowed regular yard time. Keep driving away your doctors and avoiding the issue with talk of cars and old bedroom decor, and you will remain here, isolated on the psych ward, for the rest of your sentence. For the rest of my life, I corrected her. If that is what you want, then I may as well leave now. She didn't move, a weak gambit that rarely fooled children. It never convinced mine. To use it, you had to be willing to follow through. I could never bring myself to let them out of my sight, much as Dr. Fuller would never have the courage to walk out of that door on the gamble that I'd call her back. I decided to give her the victory anyway. Let her feel powerful for a moment, before I took it all away. It would be preferable to see the blue of the sky again, I conceded. White rooms with gray furniture, guarded by monochrome uniforms, and visited by equally starkly adorned doctors, I said, gesturing at her up and down. I might as well be in heaven already for the level of cloud cover that surrounds me. Do you believe in heaven? Tasha asked, and just like that, with yet another question, the session resumed. It was the most personal question she had asked me yet. Her confidence was growing. I could not allow it to dwarf my own. She would need to regain her fear of me soon. I refused to admit that her earlier stoicism had ruffled me, yet I felt a growing urge to get the upper hand once more. She knew all too well I could never get close enough to harm her physically. I was too notorious for that kind of carelessness from the guards. I'd need to break her from a distance, and I planned to. Of course, don't you? I countered. I'm not sure. I am yet to hear a convincing argument either way. Coward, I whispered. Belief is not something you can be convinced of. Do you believe you are destined for heaven, Derek? Why not? I asked. God forgives us all for the weakness of our flawed human existence. All we need do is seek and accept it. And you have asked for forgiveness? She ventured. I could hear the eagerness in her voice, the building excitement that it could be that easy, that I could give her what she needed to scribble on her form and sleep easy, knowing she had succeeded in bringing a lost cause back from the brink. For what? I feigned ignorance. Baiting her was so easy. For your crimes. Come on, Doc. You can say it. I paused for only a second before exploding forward across the table as far as my clasped wrists would allow me, raining spittle that peppered her damn forms as I roared my best imitation of a literary detective. For murder most foul? I almost missed her reaction for my laughter. Psychologists were such fun. When will they realize that some behaviors are chosen simply for the entertainment of it, rather than the result of some past trauma? As it was, my eyes cleared from joy-induced tears just in time to see her recovering herself and returning to a normal position after trying in panic to escape her pale, metal seat. "You can try to scare me all you like, Derek," she said with breaths that had not quite slowed, "but I won't be leaving. Not as a result of any action of yours. I am your last chance, and I don't intend to be the reason this system fails you." All mirth left me, and my face dropped into a practiced blankness. I decided in that moment it was time to try a little more earnestly, no longer for my own enjoyment, but because I knew a truth that Tasha had yet to realize. I was never going to be transferred, no matter what I revealed to her. The only way I was ever going to see anything but the consuming whites of my cell again would be by my own hand. So, there was little point in her dance. I needed only one thing from the good doctor, and to get it, I wanted her distracted, nervous, and off-script. Straight-backed, head high, and glasses once more pushed up on her nose, Tasha Fuller tried her best to ignore my outburst and proceeded to ask her next question. "So, whether to God or man, you understand that you need to ask forgiveness for the deaths you caused?" "No," I said musically. "I never stated the reason I would require forgiveness. No, my prayers are more centered around lust and gluttony. There are few pleasures left to me other than my imagination and my meals," I said, winking at the pretty little doctor. An exaggeration for her benefit. I could not truthfully admit to enjoying the white mush of potato and gray mystery meat I ate daily. Thinking of her, though, that worked. I liked them pale. "Derek, you are incarcerated here for the murder of your wife and 2 daughters. Do I need to explain to you again the gravity of your situation? If myself and my colleagues cannot determine an underlying cause for your violent behavior, then you are facing a lifetime of being classed as criminally insane. Would you rather a continuation of the treatment you get here, or are you willing to embrace the chance we are giving you? At Parkhurst, you might truly find rehabilitation. All of that is at your discretion, Doc. I am here, I am an open book. I have never lied. Not once. I pride myself on honesty," I said, raising my chin in challenge. "If you want the answers you seek, you simply need to ask the right questions, instead of these meaningless generalities." I watched her scour her memory and her notes, her eyes darting, looking for the truth in my words, until my meaning dawned on her. "Why? Why did you do it?" she asked immediately, blessedly direct. "Finally," I sighed. "Sometimes, after all that education, all that introspective study and exploration of the human condition, all you need do is ask a simple, straightforward, common sense and normal question. Why did I kill them? I was saving them." I heard the click of her pen and the scrawling of notes behind the steel clipboard. Now I had her, beyond her strict training, out of her depth. "Saving them from what?" she asked, the interest bright in her eyes. "They were under the power of demons. Their lives were already forfeit. I released their souls from their torture to be claimed by the sky, where they wait for me to join them. I would be there already, if I were a stronger man." I shook my head and dropped my gaze, genuinely lamenting at my failure. Her scribbling continued for a few moments longer, before stilling the room to silence. "You thought your family were possessed by demons?" Dr. Fuller attempted to confirm. "Are you stupid?" I yelled, snapping my head back up to meet her scrutiny. It was the only part of my body I was allowed autonomy over during the sessions. "I didn't say possessed. I said they were under the power of demons." Through their muted screams, the endless stories pumped into their gray matter turned them into walking avatars for another's narrative. Their minds warped, their perception altered, and they were no longer the girls I knew. They began spouting the same garbage that was looping into our home from the black and gray bordered rectangles of controlled light. The only color in their lives coming from what was gifted by monsters via LED, while they systematically stole it from any other pursuit. My family became puppets to an evil's will. I took their souls and put them out of reach. I surrendered them into the protection of a power that exists in true light and color above our poisoned planet. I could feel my chest heaving. The passion from my torrent of words pumped through my veins. I could not stop the tears from streaming down my cheeks, the sobs from racking my body. My grief over the actions I had been forced to take broke free. It was real. I should not have had to take such drastic action, but it had been the only way. I heard the scrape of her chair as she pushed it back and rose, smelt the flowery perfume that wafted before her as she approached, and shuddered under the warmth of her hand on my shoulder. When the good doctor crouched and put her face on a level with mine, I hesitated. Her words were so kind. "It's all right now, Derek. I'm going to make sure you get the help you need." This would be a hard lesson for her to learn. I slammed my forehead into her glasses, shattering them against her face, and feeling the bone in her nose crack. It took a moment of delay for her body to catch up, but then quickly, crimson blood flowed down her face from her nose and the cuts around her eyes. I was not sure if it was hers or my own that I tasted on my cut lips. The deep red that painted our faces in unison was a desperately welcome tone amongst the stark. True color suddenly swamped the pallor of my world. It was glorious. It was relief. It was satisfaction. My head hit the back of my cell with such force that I feared the guards had already done the work for me. I laid still, stunned by the blow, and waited for my monochrome world to refocus. The white room and strong lights pierced inward, accelerating the headache that was to come. They would be back to take me to the infirmary soon enough. First, they would need to rescue poor Dr. Tasha Fuller from her minor injuries. She deserved their attention. She was the best shrink I'd ever had. She'd healed me and didn't even know it. From between my teeth, I dropped the shard of glass I'd bitten from her broken optics. I took it between my now free fingers and readied myself to join my family in salvation. From my body would birth a refuge of color amidst the sea of white. Just as they had, I would arise from a pool of bright crimson. Bathed at its center, I would finally be able to ascend to where a full spectrum of light would welcome me home. Trial by Egotism. The Honorable Judge Harold Brybar strode to the bench bearing a coy smile. The court knew that smile well, as did millions watching on view screens all over Mars, as did tens of millions back on Earth who wouldn't get the feed for another hour or so. They also knew the arch of his thick gray eyebrows, the well-trimmed salt and pepper hair he'd gracefully let recede, the petite spectacles he wore when reading, and the mild way he cleared his throat to bring the whole courtroom to attention. In offense to all known theories of jurisprudence, Judge Harold Brybar was a celebrity judge, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. As Brybar sat down, he produced his legendary gavel from the folds of his cloak. It was the gavel that had sent General Sabrina Gallo to the slammer. It was the gavel that had brought justice to the ungrateful eight. It was the gavel that had, so mournfully, let the Scarlet Assassin walk on a series of technicalities. Years ago, a rookie reporter dubbed it the cinematic hammer of justice, and the moniker stuck, though Brybar only laughed and shook his head ruefully when asked about the moniker. Chekhov would have surely side-eyed this fabled instrument of law and order. "This should be the final day of the trial," Judge Brybar said, after customarily clearing his throat. "If Miss Toddle's statement runs long, we'll cut for lunch at 11. How long do you think you'll go?" He flashed a smile at the defendant. "An hour should do it." Marissa Towdle flashed a smile right back between lips stained dark red. She came to court in a maroon pantsuit with a long matching jacket that almost reached the ground, and dark lipstick and fingernail polish to match. Stylish, but for her, understated. Earlier in the trial, she'd favored brighter colors, including a pastel blue skirt that drew immense attention, much of it mockery, in the press. She'd been on trial for previous burglaries and had proven as much a celebrity as the judge overseeing her case. That she'd taken to defending herself only heightened the circus atmosphere. You couldn't wish for a more theatrical combination of defendant and judge. "Excellent," the judge said. "That would mean the jury can deliberate over lunch. A smooth running ship at last." The assembled audience, standing room only, laughed nervously, revealing how much tension the courtroom held. In theory, Towdle should be guilty as a Labrador by a demolished birthday cake. She'd been caught red-handed in the most elaborate and movie-like theft in the history of the planet after all. But many speculated Towdle had a trick or two up her sleeve. Gambling websites gave her a 15% chance of acquittal, and even a 5% chance of escape. The third prime participant in this drama feels ordinary by comparison. Veronica Brief charted a conventional path as she rose through the prosecutorial ranks. Top grades, hard work, schmoozing, ambition, and a photographic memory. There's little reason to elaborate on her story. Veronica had aimed for calm, efficient, and professional as her persona. She let Marissa and Judge Brybar provide the entertainment. The stately prosecutor drew little mention in the tabloids despite overseeing the case of the millennium. And she'd presented a good case, which was easy in one sense because of how strong the evidence was. Someone had stolen the twin pins of Mars, diamond-encrusted spikes that ceremonially finished the oxygen dome of the first Martian city. Marissa Towdle was a known high-stakes burglar and ex-con. She'd been present at the benefit concert from which the pins were stolen. She'd purchased the chemicals needed for the distracting foam bomb that had gone off at the concert. And most damningly, one of the diamond pins had been found in her very apartment. The list of witnesses and items in evidence is so long that, again, there's little need to go into much detail. The most troubling possibility was that if the jury liked Marissa too much, that they were simply so entertained, they might ignore the evidence and vote for acquittal. Today, the defendant would make her last appeal. Today, Marissa Towdle, who'd fired her lawyers after just 4 days into the proceedings, would make her closing argument. She wasn't a lawyer, had never been to law school, and committed innumerable mistakes of law throughout the trial. But she still possessed the supernatural confidence of a legendary burglar, so she'd plowed ahead, learned from each mistake of process, always found a way to laugh with the audience as she suffered a series of sustained objections against her. The Red Planet stood entranced, listening to how she would make her final plea. Marissa Towdle rose. She was quite short, but cut a dramatic figure nonetheless. she strode to the center of the room to address the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my honored peers, good morning to you. Also, good morning to everyone watching in the live audience in this wonderful city of New Olympus and all across Mars and our sister planet of Earth. Also, a quick shout out to anyone reading the transcript in the future. That's serious dedication." Laughter. The prosecution has done a thorough job presenting the evidence against me, and I would be foolish to claim no fear. They found one of the diamond pins at my apartment. Can you believe my incredulity? Without that one piece of evidence, all they have is hearsay and circumstance. And who hasn't been hurt by hearsay and circumstance? I was sorely mistreated on the day they overturned my home. Veronica had decided early in the trial not to be surprised by anything Marissa said. Here she was, starting her final defense by bringing up the single strongest piece of evidence against her, submerging it in a strange cocktail of jokes and grievances. Still, she was as oddly compelling as she'd been the whole trial. Have I mentioned how good you look, jury? The fall weather has really brought out your fashion sense, such lovely browns and greens. I'm going to miss you all when this trial is finally over. And soon it will be over, won't it? Oh, I don't know if this is legal. Is it legal to compliment and reminisce with the jury? It is if there's no objection from the prosecution. This was the judge, now looking in Veronica's direction with a raised eyebrow. All around the court, Veronica felt all eyes suddenly on her. And it was true. She could object for relevance or ingratiation, which Mars had added to the legal code 50 years ago. "No objection," Veronica said after a pause worthy of a sitcom, to titters and laughter from the audience. She hadn't intended to object at all, no matter how wild the defendant got. It's considered poor form to object during closing arguments, unless the faults are egregious. Plus, ordinary folks see through flattery and immaterial wanderings most of the time, and that should be especially so in this case. Marissa wasn't just on trial for grand theft, but also for assault. When she'd set off the foam bomb at the dedication ceremony, 3 people had been injured, and many dozens more might have been. These charges alone could add up to decades behind bars. A jury might excuse burglary if they liked a defendant, but harming innocent spectators? No way, Veronica thought. Marissa had avoided lengthy prison sentences from previous burglaries through clever negotiating, and because she'd always been careful to avoid violence. Now, she might be mere hours from a lifetime in prison. How was she so calm? At this point, Marissa had moved on to a PowerPoint presentation with a selection of quotes projected onto the large screen across from the jury, with certain words highlighted for effect. The rotten witch made all the plans and said it would be an easy score without any risk of harm to anyone. That's what one of my supposed henchmen said about me, if you'll remember. I don't see why that insult was necessary. Read the next quote, this time from a witness who supposedly saw me outside the concert hall. She was laughing like a hyena, or like some evil witch. With the shouting inside, I could barely hear her, but I was close enough I could just make out the cackle. I could read each and every one of these quotes, each more demeaning than the last, but you can look over the full list if you've got the stomach for it. So many horrible things said about me, which I don't mind. I can accept taunts and jeers. But it is certainly interesting that so many of these witnesses couldn't help but include spiteful, disparaging remarks. And you'll notice how many bring out the W word. It almost feels like they were coordinating their testimony somehow. Veronica caught a glimpse of the jury. She read ambivalence on their faces, scowls, smirks, narrowed, focused eyes, and furrowed brows. They were all paying attention, but none appeared sympathetic, and only a few seemed amused. She found it galling that Marissa would imply misconduct from the prosecution. Early in the legal process, Marissa had tried to trade the location of the second diamond pin for legal protection, which Veronica would never have agreed to, not leastwise because the police were convinced they could lean on her conspirators to produce the second pin, an assumption which, 7 weeks later, had not come true. Those negotiations were inadmissible at trial, but made Marissa's attempts to cast the prosecution as corrupt all the more preposterous. Marissa knew she was guilty, and knew the prosecution knew she was guilty. And then there's the matter of the diamond pin of peace, found in my apartment, right under my very bed. It's the linchpin of the case against me. But do you find that likely? That a supposed master criminal would conceal the single most damning evidence in the most obvious and cliched place to hide something? Ha! And that underscores my next point, that the diamond pin of prosperity is yet to be found. If I had stolen them both, why hide one in an obvious place, then another where the police have yet still to find? I'm not going to accuse anyone else of being the real thief, and therefore the person who planted the evidence while keeping half the spoils for themselves. Not right at this moment anyway. I don't have the resources of the police or prosecutors to chase leads and likely suspects. But how can you not be suspicious of these circumstances? Marissa had raised her voice by this point. Despite her grandiosity, she'd kept her tone civil, even playful. But now she strode about the floor, her jacket swirling in great red arcs. She turned to the prosecution table and approached Veronica, though even with her heels, she stood barely a few inches taller than her adversary sitting up straight. Marissa leaned over the table between them. Veronica held her gaze in as steely a manner as she could muster. She wasn't intimidated, but feared smiling at this bit of theatrics, which might send the wrong message to the jury. They've stacked things so thoroughly against me. A huge team of cops and prosecutors all working to dig up evidence. 3 of my friends called to testify against me. Hundreds of hours of security video, reams of texts stolen from my phone. All this effort searching for any slip-up, inconsistency, or wrong place, wrong time circumstance. And in the end, their whole case rests on a single, dubious discovery. Marissa whirled on Veronica, her jacket cape swirling like a tornado. She approached the judge, held his eye contact for many moments. Veronica couldn't read her face with her back turned, but Judge Brybar's eyes narrowed, turning from amused to suspicious to worried. Only then did worry enter Veronica's own mind. Could Marissa really have a grand plan to turn the trial on its head, or even to escape? Everyone in this courtroom stands against me. I've been fighting every official and advocate aligned for a single purpose. These whole 7 weeks I've fought. She stood right before the judge now, a dark red fingernail pointed but a meter from his face. "Control yourself," the judge warned, his voice steady. Marissa slowly retreated her hand to her chest, but kept the finger out. Then she approached still further and placed her hands on the edge of the bench. Judge Brybar screwed his face up in an apoplectic grimace. "I kindly ask you to back away," the judge said with barely concealed rage. And Marissa did so. She turned slowly, her jacket an eddy rather than a hurricane. The whole audience appeared to exhale at this drawdown in tension. The calm wouldn't last. The true thief, the true mastermind, is in this courtroom right now. Marissa raised her hand, extending that damning index finger clad in crimson, thrusting it high in the air like the barrel of a smoking gun. The courtroom turned deathly quiet. Marissa twirled her finger in the air, once, twice, A woman screamed in the audience. Several people stood. Veronica noticed the judge fumbling for his gavel. Why was his gavel not to hand? Veronica's photographic memory went to work, rewinding to a minute prior. The gavel had disappeared from the moment Marissa had placed her hands on the bench. When she'd made that dramatic turn, she must have. "Approach, Your Honor," Veronica called out, but was drowned out by the growing tumult of the audience. She stood and shouted, "Approach, Your Honor! Your gavel! She has your gavel in her sleeve!" The chaos intensified, cries and laughter mixing together. Judge Brybar's eyes were wide as Phobos and Deimos in the Martian night sky. The bailiffs stood frozen for a moment, but one caught Veronica's eye. They nodded at each other and sprung into motion. Veronica charged. She couldn't say why, necessarily, but the thought entered her mind that perhaps this was a grand distraction to allow Marissa some clever escape, and that was just too much of an affront to the seasoned prosecutor. It was a breach of decorum to get involved in bailiff duties, but Veronica had been a track athlete in college and had taken basic police training. And there was so much energy in the courtroom. The bailiff, a stocky woman with a tight ponytail, whose expression almost never changed. Her name was Lawrence, Veronica wanted to say, got there first and held Marissa under the arms. Marissa was making a show of struggling without really struggling, calling her capture a brute. Veronica held Marissa's eye contact while she riffled in her sleeves, producing the lost gavel within seconds. "I believe this belongs to you," she said with what she hoped was cinematic showmanship as she cast the gavel onto the bench. Adjourned. Adjourned. Take the defendant into custody. The judge had retrieved the cinematic hammer of justice and was banging it on the bench like a woodpecker. Slowly, the veins in his forehead receded as the bailiffs took Marissa away. Next, the judge leaned down to whisper to Veronica, "Meet me in chambers. I fear we're looking at a mistrial." Of course, a mistrial. Was that Marissa's plan? But how would this help her? More chances to escape, maybe, but then she'd surely earned tighter security from this fiasco. She'd wait in prison for the next trial, and the evidence against her would be as strong as ever. Why had she done this? Why had she made such a scene? But then, she'd so loved playing the lawyer, stirring up drama and having all eyes on her. These last 7 weeks may have been the most exciting of an already legendary life. With this performance, Marissa Towdle hadn't earned her freedom, but she'd earned another shot at being the center of the known universe. When I read Beckett, in this room, cursed room, loved, cursed, where she slept, half-grown in her hometown t-shirt, shorts, no shorts, t-shirt worn with holes, on the floor, he having thrown it, under the bed, dust collected and swept and settled again, and again. Who? He. Not she. Gracious. There for the first time. Assuredly last time. No boys in the room, father said. Keep out. Nodded her head. But in the room, blue light hugging the window, scotch tape, peeling off the paint whether chipped or freshly laid or exhumed. He found her in the... No, not found. Held her in, under doomed blankets. A thumb. Under a thumb. Twisted under a thumb. Urgently. Unabashedly. Shackled by his name. No name. Names unknown. 2 in the bed. 1. World flaring by. Unedited film chopped and hacked. A sore thing. Ulcers blooming somewhere. Holes in her memory. In her body. Hush now. But the slicing. Hush, I say. Feeling her own atomic skeleton. So quickly destroyed. So quickly defiled. So quickly filled. It might serve to relax. Dissociate. But incapable. Already unaware. The girl. But the girl. Remember what? Remember the party? Supposed to be where? With whom? Taken home. Taken home with. She left the house. In the evening, bottles on the porch, tequila stinging chapped mouths. He pours and pours and pours and pours and disappears, a spoon of sugar in a wet glass. Moon casts a shadow, bloody crescent. Stray sequins scratch her shins. They flake off. She is whisked away, smells distilled. The party. What party? The secret of where it is, where it was. Must have been. Seen by people scantily dressed, a stain on the night. She wore. The idea of what she wore, received poorly, with exhilaration, noted, clicked, recorded and frozen forever as she was. Those flashes, bright in her eyes, phone cameras glinting, periphery irritated, some kind of no man's land, couldn't breathe, too hot, couldn't hear her voice, escape, wanting it all to fade to black, anywhere else but here. So leave, let out into vapor. Where did she go? Seen? By anyone? Taken home. Taken. Transported. Goods handled. Express shipping for dolls. Laid to rest in a bed of bubble wrap. Resting. In bed. Then. A stranger. No. Not a stranger. Couldn't be a stranger. To know her bed. In her room. Been in her room before. But father said no. Yet, so-called friend. Always easily trusted. Hand on her lower back. Her sentences half finished, since days with Velcro shoes. There like a mole. Constant. Dependable. Then he. Then swam in her mouth. Syllables of his name. They're in her teeth. To be scooped out by dental floss. Stuck. Tip of her tongue. His finger on her pocked tongue. A moment of gagged silence. Lips form sounds learned in primary school. Not a scream. Some sounds. Vowels from when she was small, and the words tasted new. Like a finger. A thumb. No. Like English. Children who knew the flavor. But she. The bitterness. She. Muffled sounds in play and muffled sounds. Out of touch. English more like aspic to her. At the time. At that point. But finding. Somehow she found. But one universal language in hands and dirt under fingernails. Fingernails on skin. Raking on skin. Touches. Sticking to drool. Dirty kisses on monkey bars. Language of friendship. A friend. A friend who understood her warped words. English forgotten. Shoulder by shoulder. Kisses with friends. Wood chips licking open shoes. Pigtails on her head with the little bows. And she forced herself to smile. Yanked by the ends. Tickled by the belly. Touched. Little boys. Being boys. She did not realize. Long before parties. She did not realize. Laying in the bed. Pigtails long gone. Gone where? Time spilled over from a cup. Splaying. No. Spreading. On the duvet. Uncovered. But why? The thought of... At the party. Or rather, God. Zippers undone. Knots untied. Laces in her shoes. Unlaced. Command strips flayed from a mirror shattered on the floor. Cut feet in the morning. Spliced. She struggles. Finds herself in... out of herself. Second of incomprehension. Hours. Spanning hours. Erased and unnoticed by a blink. Gosh. But her mind. A washing of sorts. Reckoning with punishment. Lack of evidence. Guilty. Punishment. Guilt in a sealed box open only to her. Vanished memory. Insufficient evidence. Inadmissible. Poured out in measured shots. Now love is an apparition in the wall. Friendship buried in a shallow grave. Unseen. Slipping through a groping fist. Strange fist groping at. Her native tongue resurfaces. from the cradle, from mother's milk, forming sounds like no. Foreigners deaf to no, adequately expressed. Speak English. But she can't. She can't. Gibberish garbled in her throat, congealed from the inside. Speak. Error. Speak. Error. Suddenly. Indubitably. He. Unadmitted. Swine. Door left unlocked, having forgotten to lock. Brought her home without keys. Carried on his shoulder. A friend. Helping hand. By a friend. Since she met him. Day one. Fat black eyes, dirty handshake. Playgrounds. Those same pigtails, sinuous in his fingers. Friendship. Firm. Invitations to places. Introductions to people. Been in her room before. Some cousins to know of. Mario Kart in his basement. Pizza on trampoline forts. Sharing generously. Growing new body parts. Sheltered. Without doubt. Certainly not. How could she, not to see it coming? A girl and a boy, together, as friends, not to trail the wicked scent. Perhaps unassuming, perhaps mistaken, unaware, naive, guilty, secretly wanting, once or twice a flirt, in sobriety dripping with meaning. He reads, pours tequila into shot glasses. Her language stinks of filth to interpret as, in that tight skirt. Combinations of, stop right there. Can it? When it comes down to it. Guilty, guilty, guilty. There in her body, there in her hands. And the cameras. A still life. Friends seeing it happen. Seeing it all happen. Indelible. The guilty party. Fine. Let it be this way. Crumbs for the world, chewed on in daylight. School hallways chattering like shivering teeth. Goosebumps. Her flesh. Feed the hungry. Fed to friends. He. Notches in his ribs. On her. Grating. Somewhere in the room. But she can't speak. Can't see. On the desk somewhere. A hairbrush. A stone. To fight with. Fight back. She can't move. Fight back. And hurt a friend. How the story goes. Pitched in the courtroom. Self-defense. When judgment day comes. And if it comes, who protects friends? She. Language unserving. There in her body. There in her hands. There in her body. There in her hands. A friend. And she says nothing. Does nothing. In this room. In just another dead girl underwater. Trigger. Warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black, lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article published by a local newspaper reads, "Promising high school student missing after night, swim in lake." Shortly after, the Water Rescue Service and Fire Brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight, yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No. No and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow, and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance. But I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would 2 girls argue about if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly? Cindy? Carrie? Something with a C though, right? So when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl, the one who got scared at every creak in the dark, the one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank. A bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent, but when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her before the trip had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party, and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually, people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast, or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in. Enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens, and I'll fade away, like countless other women who are silenced every day, simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the 2 men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite, in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater, dressed for ruin. On a sticky Saturday evening in downtown Philadelphia, the line for Evie's Eden wrapped around the block. Blaring, fast-tempo music and strobing neon invaded the detectives' senses as they pushed their way through a throng of warm, gyrating bodies to take a seat at the bar. The stench of sweat and stale beer permeated the dark room, and the rush of frigid air from the vents above offered minimal relief from the stifling heat. The officers shouted to make themselves heard over the din, while several people almost knocked the men from their seats in their drunken attempt to squeeze between them and get the bartender's attention. The younger of the 2 men, a clean-shaven blonde with neatly combed hair and stern hazel eyes, tugged at his tie and scowled at a group of scantily clad women with neon-painted bodies as they approached him. They gave him sour looks and a few rude gestures in return, before scampering off to find a more willing recipient of their affections. His partner looked down on most of the room at almost 6 feet. Gray streaked through his dark, purposely disheveled hair, and there was a hard glint in his cobalt eyes. His broad shoulders and well-built barrel chest, along with the faint scars littering his arms, made Vincent look less approachable than the blonde detective. The illusion was broken by the deep laugh lines etched into his cheeks as he chuckled and teased his dour partner. You didn't have to scowl at them like that. The poor girls were just being friendly. The blonde scoffed, rolling his eyes as he said, I'm not interested in their kind of friendship. Besides, we're here to work, not socialize, remember? Speaking of, should we really be consorting with criminals to solve cases? Vincent ordered a Corona and lime from a bartender even taller than him, with bubblegum pink and deep purple hair styled in a short mohawk. He accepted the drink with a charming grin and left a generous tip before facing his partner, ignoring his disapproving glare. Criminals make the best informants. This one has helped us with a lot of cases. Her information network is invaluable. The younger detective grit his teeth, holding back an argument. No matter his feelings, the boy had to accept that their case had gone from nearly solved to stone cold in less than 24 hours. They needed whatever help they could get. Vincent's partner tugged at his tie. Sweat rolled down the boy's neck and stained his collar. He had tried to convince him to change out of his uniform, but was unsurprised when he refused. He wondered if the stubborn boy regretted it now with the sweltering heat pressing in on them. Vincent downed his drink and ordered another while his partner gave in, removing his tie and unbuttoning the top 2 buttons. The young detective barked another question before Vincent could comment. "Where is this informant, then? Every minute we waste here is another our suspect has to flee the country." "Oh, I don't think we have to worry about that. She should be here any..." "Ah, there she is." They turned their attention to the top of a metal staircase at the back of the club. Vincent's throat felt dry despite the 2 drinks he'd already finished as he watched his old friend step through the VIP entrance. She gave her white suede jacket to the doorman with an alluring smile, then turned to face the officers as she descended the stairs. Diamond-studded gold stilettos clicked against the metal as she went. Her strapless, midnight pantsuit with a plunging neckline swayed around her ankles and long legs, but cinched tightly at her waist to accentuate wide hips and hug her chest. The fabric shimmered under the strobing neon lights, and the diamond choker that cascaded down her throat like a waterfall and nestled between her breasts flashed brightly. Smooth olive-toned skin contrasted the gleaming jewels perfectly. Bright copper ringlets spilled partially over one shoulder. The rest pulled back with a clip to show off the shaved right side of her head. Russet painted lips with a prominent cupid's bow, dark thick lashes, and a chocolate smoky eye highlighted her high cheekbones and bright electric blue eyes. Vincent turned to face his partner as he scoffed and said, "You're joking." "Nope." "Detective, I'd like you to meet Evelyn Ross." "Evelyn, this is my new partner, Connor Williams." Connor was so distracted by her appearance that he hadn't realized she was walking right toward them. Evelyn smiled coyly and extended an intricately manicured hand. Tiny rhinestones were arranged in a rose design on every other stiletto-shaped nail, which were painted to match her eyes. Her breathy tone was deeper than Vincent remembered, and laced with expertly veiled sarcasm. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Detective." Reluctantly taking her proffered hand, Connor forced an awkward smile and said, "Likewise." Her lips twitched with amusement as she dropped his hand, then turned to speak to Vincent with something akin to fondness. "Join me for a drink?" "Of course." Evelyn lifted a panel and moved behind the bar towards a burgundy-painted steel door. Vincent 2 steps behind her. Connor followed, but the senior detective shook his head and said, "Wait here. Get a drink or something. I won't be long." Then, before Connor had a chance to question him, Vincent followed the gang leader through the door. As the steel door to Evelyn's office closed behind him with a click, a chill washed over Vincent's face and arms, leaving goosebumps in its wake. A faint aroma of vanilla and dark cherries replaced the reek of sweat. Vincent's stiff shoulders relaxed at the familiar scent. 4 sleek leather armchairs surrounded a mahogany card table, and a personal bar stood in the far left corner. An ashtray made of cobalt glass sat on the table, clean and empty of any remnants. Vincent's fingers itched for the smokes tucked in his breast pocket. A single painting of a man and two women performing around a piano hung on the wall opposite him. It had hung there since the day it went missing from a museum in Boston some 30 years ago, when he was barely a thought. Evelyn's office was quiet, except for the clinking of glass as she poured them drinks. The reinforced concrete walls, painted evergreen, blocked out all trace of music or chatter from the club. Vincent sunk into the cool, smooth leather, stifling a sigh. Evelyn sauntered over to the table, sitting on top directly in front of him and crossing her legs before handing him his glass. Vincent enjoyed the bitterness of the bourbon as it washed over his tongue and slid down his throat. She always did have the best taste in liquor. Vincent watched his old friend curiously as she set the glass aside and leaned close to pull 2 camel blue 100s and a lighter from his front pocket, her lips just shy of grazing his stubbled cheek, and the heady aroma of vanilla and dark cherries briefly overwhelmed him. Electric blue eyes dancing with mirth bore into his as she slipped the cig between his teeth and lit it for him. Then, a rush of clarity and disappointment hit hard as she sat back to light her own. Curls of white smoke drifted from her lips and slowly filled the room. She stared him down with a raised brow until the cigarette had burnt down almost to the filter. Then she said, "So, you going to tell me what you want?" He raised his own brows and grinned teasingly as he answered, "Can't I just come to see an old friend?" Her unimpressed stare pulled a snort of laughter from his lips. She held her hand out expectantly and retorted, "Not when you have your dog waiting outside." Vincent relented with a sigh and pulled a file from inside his jacket, which she snapped from his fingers and threw open on the table next to her. The detective lowered his leg from the table and leaned forward to look over its contents, which she was flipping through with a carefully placid expression. The faces of 15 young women stared up at him, all of whom had gone missing within the last 6 months. The final photograph in the file was a mugshot of a man with beady gray eyes, greasy black hair, a pudgy face, and a sad, wispy little mustache. Vincent watched Evelyn's face carefully as her bright eyes paused on his picture, looking for any sign of recognition. If she did know the man, she wasn't giving it away, so he decided to probe her a little. "He's our main suspect. Goes by the name Rob, full name Robert Carroll. We've been tracking him down for a month, even got a hit on his hideout. Then we go in for the raid last night, and he's gone without a trace, so now we've hit a dead end. Do you recognize him?" Evelyn placed the picture back in the file, closed it, and took a generous sip from her drink before answering with a carefully even tone. "Afraid not, should I?" Vincent kept his own tone light as he pushed a little more. "Well, our files say he was one of your men until about a year ago. You've made it a point to know the names of everyone who works for you, haven't you?" The stare she pinned him with was bitterly cold, and her breathy voice took on a dangerous edge. "My organization doesn't deal in sex trafficking, a fact of which I know you're quite aware." "Yes. I'm also very aware of how you've punished those who have gone behind your back in the past, which is why I thought you might be able to help me find my suddenly missing suspect." The way her lips curled into a cruel sneer and her face turned away confirmed his suspicions that she was involved in Robert's disappearance. He sighed as he put out his cigarette, stood, and placed his arms on either side of Evelyn's hips, caging her in. She met his gaze with pursed lips as he asked, "Where is he, Evie?" The brazen woman leaned forward, trailing her sharp nails down the side of his jaw and over his chest. The coy smirk was back as she goaded him. "If I did know where he is, Why should I hand him over to you? My men are mine to punish. That's the deal we made, remember? This isn't some petty drug dealer who stole from you. This man is responsible for the disappearance of 15 women that we know of. Who knows how many are still alive? Their families deserve justice. Evie rolls her eyes and scoffs at his appeal to her better nature. Oh yes, sitting comfortably in a jail cell watching TV and getting 3 meals a day sounds like justice to me. Those families deserve to see him strung up and castrated. Try again. Vincent muttered a curse under his breath. If it were anyone else, he would just get a warrant, but Evelyn had become untouchable in the last few years. She had half the department, the mayor, even their state senator in her pocket. No one would dare sign a warrant against her, and she'd never take a threat from him seriously anyway. Time to change tactics. He wove his left hand into her ginger curls, running calloused fingers down the back of her neck. She tensed at the contact and repressed a shiver, but the goosebumps erupting over her arms and the excitement in her eyes gave her away. Encouraged, Vincent pressed his forehead against hers and whispered, "For me, then, as a favor to an old friend?" Her nails grazed his cheek again as she glowered. "Right. A friend who only comes to see me when he wants something. I feel a little used. Maybe you could give me something in exchange for my kindness." "What do you want?" He could guess the answer, had known her long enough to read the cues. In their previous meetings, she had always treated him like he was just another business partner, careful to keep her distance, giving no hint toward their long-standing and complicated friendship. Her forwardness now was telling, but he wanted her to say it. A selfish part of him needed her to admit that she had missed their closeness. Evie pushed him back into the chair, placing her knees on either side of his and pulling herself close. Her hand left his cheek, burying itself into his messy dark locks, gripping tight. Evelyn's electric blue eyes bore into his as she said, "Don't play dumb, Vince. It doesn't suit you, and I'm not in the mood for any more games." It was as much of an admission as he was going to get, and Vincent gave in with a groan as he pulled her lips to his in a bruising kiss, one that she returned with just as much vigor. Sometime later, Vincent watched with hazy satisfaction as the cobalt lace of Evie's lingerie disappeared back underneath her shimmering silk outfit. When Evie faced him with an equally sated look, he took a moment to appreciate her swollen, though still perfectly painted lips. Her hair, which he had torn from its clip, cascaded over her shoulders in a wild tangle of curls that made her look deceptively innocent. One could almost mistake her for a normal woman like this, instead of a dangerous crime boss. He wondered how many others had been permitted to see her that way, then scolded himself for hoping he was the only one. Vincent gave up that chance a long time ago, the day he swore his oath and joined the police force. Even this small indulgence was one he shouldn't have allowed himself. Once they finished straightening themselves, the pair looked at each other. Vincent lamented the return of Evelyn's closed-off expression that had been so open and vulnerable under his touch just a few minutes ago. But their time was up, and he came here for a reason. He struggled to keep the regret out of his tone as he asked, "So, where can I find Mr. Carroll?" Evelyn grinned playfully, hips swaying as she walked over to the bar, picked up a cell phone, and hit one of the speed dial numbers. After a few moments, the call picked up. Her orders were curt. "Bring him in." A side door that Vincent swore was a wall before opened, and a beat-up, barely conscious man who matched Rob's description to a T was shoved through by 2 bulky, suited thugs. Rob, with hands tied in front of him, collapsed to his knees. The thugs backed out without a word, and the door shut behind them, leaving nothing but smooth wall in its place. Evelyn laughed at his incredulous glare and said, "He's all yours, detective." Vincent rolled his eyes and strode over to the quickly fading man, tossing a sarcastic remark over his shoulder as he yanked the suspect up. "If you were going to hand him over anyway, why bother making such a fuss?" She giggled and walked over to open the burgundy door for him. He could already see his younger partner's expression morphing from annoyance to surprise and disbelief. Evie's breath at his ear sent a tingle down his spine. "Well, I thought he would make a good gift, but I wanted something too. Don't pretend you didn't enjoy it." He glanced to the right to meet her roguish grin as she continued, "Happy birthday." Connor took the unconscious trafficker off his hands, so Vincent turned back to Evie, who stood in the doorway with arms crossed, looking way too pleased with herself. He had forgotten that his birthday was tomorrow, and that it was something he and Evie shared. Vincent chuckled wryly and carded a scarred hand through his hair as he thanked her. Then he helped Connor drag their suspect out to the car, tossed him in the back, and settled into the driver's seat. From the corner of his eye, he saw his partner open his mouth, most likely to barrage him with questions. "Don't ask, it's complicated. But now you see what I was saying about Evelyn being one of our best informants. This isn't the first time she's handed our guy right to us, and it probably won't be the last." Connor didn't press for more information. He faced front with a thoughtful, almost conflicted look, and the ride to the station passed in silence. A silence that Vincent spent thinking of her, of their bodies pressed together, and foolishly wishing that he could do it again. "My friend Matilda, she did it. But I'm getting ahead of myself." This all started when Sadie moved into a new home. 25 years old, a nice car, a new house, and a cat. She liked cats. They are self-sufficient, but at the same time, loving balls of fluff and affection. Her cat was always with her and followed her from room to room. Her cat, Matilda, was also her best friend. Not just words, they really were friends. They talked to each other and slept together. Moving into the house and setting it up was seriously the first adult thing she ever did. She got the house for a great price, and the previous owners told her they needed to sell fast because they took a job in California and needed to be there by the 1st of the month. She remembered this house when she was little. Her aunt lived here, and her mom and her would visit a few times a month. Her aunt had a little girl she played with when she was there. Maddie was her name. They loved playing dress-up and could play forever. She had a favorite doll she carried with her everywhere. It was an off-brand Barbie-type doll, but it was dressed like a hippie and had blue hair. Sadie thought that was the coolest doll in the world, and when they played, the doll went on adventures, traveled all over the world, and always came home from her trip and took a nap. Sadie and her mom went to the house one day, but Maddie wasn't there. Her mom told her she was gone. Sadie figured she had moved and went in to play with the toys again. But Sadie felt like Maddie was there, playing with her. Maddie told her she would be with her forever, and she was. Sadie and her mom would come over, and Sadie would go to Maddie's room and play. She knew Maddie was there, in the room. Maddie told her where she was, but it did not make sense. Sadie never told an adult what Maddie told her. They stopped going over to the house after a few months. She thinks they moved out and went to another town. She heard her mom telling someone that they went upstate. They never talked about where, nor did they mention a place, just upstate. Sadie grew up and did well in school. She knew things thanks to Maddie, and because of that, she got away with a lot that she shouldn't have. But once she started college, that feeling and precog inkling disappeared. These days, she never thinks about it. Lately, though, She's getting that little tickle again. She knows things and has a familiar feeling that she can't shake. At night, she dreams amazing dreams. During the day, she sees things around her, people, events, and places she dreamed about the night before. Maddie was back. The little girl, Maddie, not someone her age. She thought about that, and it made sense to her. She knew her at the age of 6 and 7, and to Sadie, Maddie would always be 7 years old and carry the hippie doll with blue hair. A few weeks after they moved into the house, Matilda started a strange ritual. When Sadie came home from work, Matilda would be in the corner of the living room, relaxed but seeming to be scared or nervous. She would walk over and pick her up, but this time, she realized the floor was a little soft. It felt spongy. She called a contractor, Robin and Wilhelmina Ruck, and on Saturday, he and his wife stopped by to evaluate the work. He measured, tested, and told her $600 to make it solid again. She agreed, and they would start on it Monday morning. The contractors lived a few doors away, and she had no issue telling them she would leave the key on a magnet in the mailbox next to the front door. At 8 o'clock, she left for work, leaving the key where she had said. And at 10:30 on the dot, Wilhelmina called and told her she needed to get home now. It took her half an hour to get home, and when she did, there were police cars, a coroner, and more people in front of and inside her home than she thought possible. As she parked at the end of her driveway, she was approached by a pair of plain-clothed detectives, a man and a woman. "Are you Miss Roberts?" the man asked. "I am." "What's going on?" Sadie asked. "I am Detective Marlowe, and this is Detective Finley. We are here investigating the incident in your living room." Okay, she was confused, and looking at her face, you could see the disconnect between what she knew and what they just said to her. Sadie said, "What incident?" Detective Finley asked, "You have no idea?" Sadie shook her head, hoping someone would fill her in. Detective Marlowe said, "It appears that your contractor opened a section of your floor this morning to do the repair you asked him to do and found something rather disturbing." She stared at him like he was about to grow a third eye. He looked at her, she knew, waiting for her to say something, but she didn't. He continued, "They found the remains of a child, wrapped in plastic, airtight. Her neck was broken. Can you shed some light on any of this?" "I can't. I bought this house a month or so ago and moved in. I always liked this house and was happy it went on the market." Detective Finley said, "You are familiar with this house?" "In a way. When I was little, maybe 6 or 7 years old, my mom and I used to visit here. I called the lady Aunt Roberta. I think their last name was Powell. Now I realize she was not any relation, just a friend of my mother. She had a daughter, Maddie, that I played with when I was here." The detective added, "What happened to them?" "All I remember is that they moved upstate." "Where upstate?" Marlowe asked. "No idea. All they ever said was upstate, never a city name." "Can we speak to your mother?" "How can we get in contact with her?" Finley asked. Sadie smiled ever so slightly. Before she could speak, Finley asked, "Why the grin?" "I have a rather interesting sense of humor, always have. I almost told you to contact my mom by seance, which made me smile. My mother died a couple of years ago from cancer." "Sorry to hear that." Both detectives narrowed their eyes at the comment, but they let it pass. "Is there anyone you know who can tell us about Roberta and Maddie?" "I have no clue. Until last night, I forgot all about this." Both detectives showed a curiosity in their eyes, speaking together. Last night? It's kinda silly, but I dreamt about Maddie and I last night. We played in her room as our parents had coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Probably because yesterday I went up to the attic and it looked like no one had been there in a long time. It was covered in dust. But I found a box marked Maddie's things. I opened it and found a hairbrush, her favorite one. We used to brush each other's hair back then. "Can we get that brush?" Marlowe asked. "Of course. It is still in the attic. Pull the cord in the hall and climb up. There is no light up there, so you'll need a flashlight." "You said it was covered in dust. Was there any disturbance in that dust?" Marlowe asked. "Well, other than my footprints, my shoe prints actually, there were children's prints in the dust. Bare feet. They looked fresh, so I thought the previous owners had a kid who went to the attic once before moving. We need to check out that attic." Marlowe looked at Finley, who nodded. He donned gloves and booties and headed into the house. "Can we go inside? I would like to see how much of my home is disassembled." Finley gestured, and they went into the house. The contractors sat at the breakfast bar, and Sadie walked over to them. Finley followed. Mr. Ruck said, "It appears your floor was so bad because someone removed and did not properly replace it after they buried the body. At that moment, the clear plastic containing the bones of a child was extracted from the floor." Sadie looked at it and was shocked. "That's Maddie," she exclaimed. "How do you know?" "That doll, it's unmistakable. She took it everywhere with her. Maddie and I used to play with it all the time." Finley walked over and looked at the digital images they had taken before they moved the bones. She looked and found the doll. In the image, the skeleton was lying on its back, the doll on its chest, and the hands of the victim holding the doll. Whoever did this knew the relationship between the girl and the doll. Finley returned to the three onlookers as Marlowe returned with the box of Maddie's possessions. "I found the brush. Maybe we can make a positive ID of the little girl," he said. Finley replied, "No need." Sadie made a positive ID. He looked at the skeleton. "How?" "That doll, they played with it when they played together." "Are you certain, Miss Roberts?" "I am. I know it. I feel it." "Look at the doll. On its left hand, you'll see a couple of fingers missing. Her cat chewed them off." She grabbed the tablet and found the picture of the left hand. Fingers were missing. "Okay then. Maddie has been found and will be properly laid to rest. First, our ME needs to examine her. She was my friend when I was little. Let me know when I can properly bury her. We'll keep you informed." They left the house, and in a few minutes, the other cops and everyone else left. Mr. and Mrs. Ruck and Sadie were left alone. Matilda came from the back of the house and hopped onto the counter. She snuggled to her owner. "I think I will call it a night. I can take care of it in a few hours tomorrow. I have all the measurements, and the detectives said they would not need to return to the hole. So, tomorrow, it will look like it was never an issue." "Thank you." He walked over and covered the hole with a tarp, stapling it to the plywood around the hole. Sadie knew it was a critter barrier and to stop the weather from getting into the house. Once they left, Sadie sat on the couch facing the hole. Matilda sat on her lap but had not moved for over an hour. Maybe 15 minutes passed, and the hair on Matilda's back started to rise. Sadie felt it too. The room got cold, and the hairs on Sadie's neck began to rise. Matilda's back was hunched, and she was staring at the tarp. Her eyes focused on the tarp, and her pupils were their maximum size. She was looking for something, or she saw something. The tarp pushed up slightly, and Matilda hissed. Sadie calmed her. As she did, she saw her friend rising through the tarp, and she was holding the doll. More precisely, she could see through her friend. "Thank you." Her words sounded distant, echoed like they were in a great cavern. A moment later, Maddie began to fade until she was gone. Matilda settled back onto Sadie's lap. "Well, Matilda, I know now why I had to buy this house. Maddie needed to rest, and we needed to help her." Matilda gave the strangest meow Sadie had ever heard, and then started purring. Sadie sat on the couch a bit longer, thinking of playing with Maddie. It was a good memory. She did it. Now, her friend can rest, sipping tea with a pretty monster. Mothers keep secrets from their families for good reasons. Jody's mom, for example, sleeps around. Amanda's mom snorts a little coke. The worst thing I can say about my mom is that she smokes. But all that changed today when I came home from college earlier than planned. Home. The place where Mom ruled. The woman who gave me unending advice on how to keep things looking good down there. The woman who overshared intimate details of her personal life with me. It was nearly midnight when I unlocked the door, hoping Mom was in bed so I could do the same. Unfortunately, she was up. In the living room, nude, save for a pair of hooker heels, strangling someone with pantyhose. College, for all its good points, did not prepare me for this. There was no curricular path to take that dealt with mothers in the act of killing someone while wearing no clothes, so I just stood there and watched the victim struggle before going limp. "Hello, dear. You're home early." Mom smiled the smile that garnered her an obscene amount of money on the public speaking circuit. If she was nonplussed, I missed it. "What the fuck, Mom?" My university vocabulary deserted me at the moment. "I'll get dressed and make us a nice cup of tea, dear. And don't be vulgar." I didn't want tea, but I got it anyway. Black tea. Strong enough to float a horseshoe on. Sweet enough to send me into diabetic shock. Mom thought tea was a cure for all ills, especially when delivering bad news. When she and Dad decided to get divorced, the news came with tea. I had no idea how to start this conversation. What I did was glare at her until she spoke. It had to be done. Mom reported this as if murder were a necessary evil, like dealing with periods, shopping with your mom, or figuring out the right bra to buy for the senior prom. Who was he? This wasn't what I really wanted to know, but I was afraid to ask her what the dead woman's sins were. She. Mom sipped her tea and nibbled on a Girl Scout cookie. Trefoils. It took me a moment to digest this little nugget of information. Since the person had a bag over their head and was fully dressed, I think I can be excused for not knowing the gender of the dead person. "Okay, Mom, let me get this straight. You were nude, and you strangled a woman to death." Well, I had to get her here first, so I honey-trapped her." "What's that?" "A honey trap? Using sexual promises to lure someone to a place where you can do what you want to do to them." "But..." My voice trailed off, unsure of how I wanted to object to Mom's behavior. Mom stood up. "While you're busy trying to construct a complete sentence, I'll just nip out and load the body in the car. I have a date with a band that simply won't wait." I drank the tea. It helped. I fell asleep waiting for Mom to return from her errands. I refused to think about the incident since it involved some sort of saw, so I popped one of her sleeping pills and crashed. It was afternoon when I woke up. The events of the night seemed like a horrible dream, but I had evidence that it happened. Mom's slut heels were still in the living room, reposing innocently under the coffee table. "Good afternoon, sunshine. Tea?" I could write a treatise on how I didn't want tea, but I would get it anyway. "Tell me." I hoped the first 2 words I uttered today would be sufficient for the day. They weren't. "Sweetie, do you remember Uncle Zach?" "Barely." I sipped the tea. Mom's tea should be weaponized by the Pentagon. "Well, he was fond of you and your female cousins. Too fond, if you get my meaning." I stared at her, puzzled. "So fond," she continued, "that he would often put his hands in inappropriate places." "Okay, I don't remember that. He used to give me a box of chocolates and a stuffed animal when he visited. And that's as far as he would get with you, dear." So, I did what any right-thinking mother would do in this situation. I killed him. I asked for another cup of tea with extra sugar. How? God, I had so many other questions about the matter, but my brain wouldn't allow them to get to my mouth. Stupid, stupid brain. She explained. Sliced the carotid, dumped him into the bayou. Watched the alligators spin him to the bottom. I don't know if he died from my wound or from drowning by alligator. Did you know? Mom paused to take a sip of tea. That alligators bury their food and let it rot for a bit before eating it? No, Mom, I didn't know that, I said matter-of-factly. Mom sighed. Anyway, that started me thinking, what am I doing with my life? Sure, I'm making tons of money and I have a beautiful daughter, but is that enough? Don't I owe it to the world to get rid of as many bad people as possible? The mother-daughter relationship throughout history is fraught with differing opinions, tastes, and morals. I expected to argue with my mom over things, but this wasn't a discussion I ever expected to have. By killing people? Bad people, Mom said, correcting me, raising her right forefinger in the air. We have laws, Mom. The problem being, sweetie, that the law enforcement authorities always act after the fact. They come to the rescue after the person is dead, raped, or otherwise victimized. And then, well, what? How successful are they? She had a point. Which brings me to this. I leaned forward and stared at my mom. You seduced a woman? Mom smiled a smile that would make Dracula have second thoughts. Yes, I'm very good at seduction. Mom, I'm pretty. I still have my figure and a certain coquettish mannerism that others are drawn to. Fuck. Don't be vulgar, dear. We sat in silence for a few minutes. It was an uncomfortable silence on my part, but Mom seemed to enjoy it. She flipped through a fashion catalog, clucking her tongue at some of the modern attire. But that's Mom. Old-fashioned about fashion, but quite liberal when it comes to liberating the living from breathing. You have something to tell me? I sat up, stunned. Given the recent events, the news I had for her had been forgotten. The momentous revelation now seemed picayune. I did, but I think your actions have eclipsed my news. Mom grinned. I see that the expensive education is paying off. How many people have you killed, Mom? I was loath to share my information right now. Didn't seem like the right time, what with my mom's confessions. And I know what you're thinking. How many people has she sent to the grave? I don't think I want to know because the number, I'm sure, is big. And I'll tell you why I think this. My mom is crazy. 2 things were revealed in the next 10 minutes. 1. Mom had, thus far, killed 37 people. I say thus far because she's not a woman to give up on her dreams. 2. She already knew I was gay. How did you know? As good as it felt to not be censured by a parent for one's sexual proclivities, it was still a bombshell. You wore a lot of plaid in high school. My mom took my hand across the table. Dear, no woman looks good in plaid. That's it? Heavens no. You listened to a lot of Bikini Kill and L7. So what? And you slept with Jody in your room many, many nights. Yeah, okay. Girls do that. Nude? She got me there. I spent the rest of the day avoiding Mom. By that, I mean that I went out, had a few drinks, and I may or may not have kissed a couple of women. It's kind of a blur, which is what I was hoping for. When I got up the next day, Mom was gone. In typical style, she left me a note that said everything and explained nothing. Be back next week, sweetie. I hope you still adore your mother, despite what you perceive as her faults. As for me, I'm proud my daughter has the courage to accept who she is. There is a nice mushroom and onion galette in the fridge, and a rather nice bottle of Pinot from Oregon. Much better than the California Pinot, don't you think? I spent the week wrestling with the issue. Seriously, how does one deal with a homicidal mother? I could turn her in, but that comes with a whole new set of problems that I didn't want to deal with. I could ask her to stop, but I'd bet my K.D. Lang album collection that she wouldn't. I could help her, but the thought turned my stomach. Or I could just accept my mom the way she is. Easier said than done. I'm famished, dear. Care to grab lunch? Mom had been back 5 minutes, and as far as I can tell, she took several hits of speed on the flight home. Since I was in the process of trying to accept my mom as she was, I accepted the invitation. Maybe being around her more would ease my unease, settle my unsettled mind. The local pastry shop was her choice, oddly enough. I say oddly enough because she always complained about the line servers. They have the best tea, sweetie, and a kouign-amann that simply sends one's tongue to nirvana. I'll order 2 for us, along with a pot of tea. What I wanted was a Coke and a Danish. Sure thing, Mom. The line wasn't long, so we zipped through, laden with our treasures. Mom picked a spot against the wall, just in case a miscreant came in and started a brouhaha. Mom had a strategy for everything, and a gun. You just want to shoot somebody, don't you? Sarcasm isn't my usual mode of interacting with my mom. Desperate pleading was my game. Not until I finished my tea and pastry. Mom graced me with another crocodile smile. Nice. Very cultured. The girls behind the counter are extra surly today, dear. They're always a little ungracious, though. Is that why you told them to smile more and to ponder their assuredly bleak futures less? Obviously, Mom said, after swallowing her pastry and taking a sip of tea. She would never speak with food in her mouth. Hell, she wouldn't even nod with food in her mouth. My mom was a motivational speaker who had written 2 bestsellers, A Heaping Helping of Self-Help and A Second Helping of Self-Help. I never understood why people shelled out big bucks for her books and even more money to attend one of her speaking events. Her advice was pablum, her sayings trite. Because of this, though, she felt it was her right, no, her obligation, to offer advice to all and sundry. Poisoning would be too good for them. Don't be flip, dear. Or electrocution. We could call it the juice of justice. Okay, Mom was going to play the game, outdo me with sarcasm. I gave it up. Why did you kill the woman in the living room? I had avoided this question, A cold hand squeezed my heart. A dark dread that the answer would confirm my mom as an irredeemable monster enveloped me. She profited from charities raising money for sick kids. Quite clever, actually. She ran the funds through several shell corporations, but in the end, the money ended up in an account in Barbados. And I persuaded her to transfer the ill-gotten gains to the proper charities. Persuaded? You would be amazed at what one can do with a lit cigarette and a serrated knife. God, Mom. More tea, dear? The myriad philosophers that I had read didn't help. The addition by subtraction philosophy that Mom purported as rationalization for her murderous ways didn't help. All I could think of was that the hands that soothed me as a youngster now wielded knives and cigarettes. I finally concluded that Mom's ways were another expression of love, a new and, to her, improved way to do what she could for her fellow humans before the long sleep. As for me, I'll take a more traditional approach and avoid murdering people, and I told my mom this. Never say never, dear. Mom's advice on things came with platitudes. I'll never stop loving you, Mom. She smiled, nodding her head at my cleverness. You mean you'll always love me? Shut up, Mom. Okay, dear, but come, give your mother a hug. Put out the cigarette first. Because she loved me, she put out the cigarette.